All right, let's just jump right in. We're all bombarded with this message, right? Strive for more, build that perfect life, land the perfect career. But have you ever stopped to think, what if that very pressure to have it all is what's actually, completely exhausting us? I mean, you know the feeling, don't you? On the outside, everything looks perfect. Your resume is polished, your social life looks busy, you're checking all the boxes. But inside, phew, it's a totally different story. Just this constant, quiet buzz of stress and that nagging voice of self-doubt. If any of that rings a bell, trust me, you are so not alone in this.
Well, there's actually a name for this exhausting balancing act. It's called high-functioning anxiety. It's like wearing a mask of success that hides a very real and very challenging struggle on the inside.
Now that term might sound a little clinical, but the idea behind it is something I think a lot of us can relate to. The Mayo Clinic basically describes it as this paradox. You're not unable to function. In fact, you're functioning at an incredibly high level, but you're doing it despite the anxiety. You're the one who's always overachieving, the reliable one, all while you're battling a private storm inside.
And this comparison really nails that split, doesn't it? On the outside, it's all green lights and success. But on the inside, it's this relentless, vicious cycle. The fear of what people think drives you to work harder, which leads to overachieving, which of course leads to burnout. It's a kind of success that just feels so fragile, like the whole thing could just crumble at any second.
So if you're feeling this way, it's so easy to think it's some kind of personal flaw, that you're just not handling things well. But the data shows something way bigger is going on. This isn't just about you, it's about the world we're all trying to navigate. For decades, we all kind of held on to this really comforting idea that after the chaos of your 20s and 30s, you'd hit this sweet spot in midlife. You'd have more stability, more wisdom, and just less stress. But does that old belief even hold up anymore? Well, to find out, the National Study of Daily Experiences did this really fascinating comparison, looking at the daily lives of adults back in the 90s versus the 2010s.
And the answer? It's a huge no. It turns out middle-aged adults today are dealing with stressors on 19% more days than people in the same age group did just a couple of decades ago. I mean, think about that. That's almost an entire extra week of stress every single year. That's a lot.
But wait, it's not just how often we're stressed, it's how intense that stress feels. The study found that how much we worry about our finances from just day-to-day hassles, that shot up by a staggering 61%. A problem with the car or an unexpected bill doesn't just feel like a minor setback anymore. It feels like a major threat to your entire future.
So what this all means is that the script has completely flipped. That part of our lives that was supposed to be a time of calm and stability has now become the absolute epicenter of modern stress. Something fundamental has really changed about our world.
Okay, so if something fundamental has changed, then what is it? What's the engine that's driving this massive spike in pressure? Well, a huge part of the answer lies in this incredibly powerful psychological force, the comparison trap. This idea is actually not new at all. Way back in the 1950s, a psychologist named Leon Festinger came up with his social comparison theory. He argued that we have this deep built-in need to know where we stand. And how do we figure that out? By constantly measuring ourselves against other people. And this whole comparison thing plays out in two main ways. Sometimes we do what's called downward comparison to feel a little better about ourselves. But we also do a lot of upward comparison, looking at people who seem to have it better. And while that can be motivating, let's be honest, more often than not, it just leaves us feeling like we're falling behind. And this is where our modern world just throws gasoline on that old fire. See, it's not just about keeping up with the Joneses next door anymore. Social media has created this relentless 24/7 highlight reel. It's a machine built for endless upward comparison, where we're constantly measuring our real, messy, behind-the-scenes lives against someone else's perfectly edited vacation pics and shiny career updates. It's an impossible standard.
This constant comparing, this constant pressure to measure up, has led to a really troubling and honestly dangerous consequence, what some researchers are now calling an epidemic of perfectionism. And we're not just talking about being a little hard on yourself. Research from the London School of Economics points to a very specific and very damaging type called socially prescribed perfectionism. This is the feeling that everyone else, your friends, your family, the media, has these impossibly high expectations for you, and that you have to meet them just to be accepted. And the growth of this is it's genuinely alarming. Back in 1989, less than 1 in 10 young people were struggling with this. By 2017, that number had doubled. And if the trend keeps going,
Projections suggest it could affect nearly 1 out of every 3 people by 2050. That's staggering.
And look, this is not a small thing. This specific type of perfectionism, that feeling of being crushed by what everyone else expects, is the one that's most strongly linked to serious mental health conditions. It's an incredibly heavy price to pay for chasing some impossible idea of a perfect life.
So, we've looked at the problem, we've looked at the wider trend and the psychology behind it. And yeah, it can all feel pretty overwhelming. But what if the solution isn't to try and run the race faster? What if it's about dropping out of that race altogether and just redefining what the finish line even is?
The author Jim Rohn once said, "On any one day, you can massively change the direction of your life." It's such a powerful reminder that we're not stuck. The path you're on right now doesn't have to be the path you're on tomorrow. You can always change course.
So embracing this new way of thinking, it's really about learning a whole new set of rules for yourself. It's about accepting that, hey, life isn't some straight line with one big finish line at the end. It's totally okay to not have the next 20 years all mapped out. It's about giving yourself the freedom to just explore without being terrified of what other people will think. And maybe most importantly, it's about focusing on the small daily things that actually make you happy right now, instead of always sacrificing today for some distant future that, let's be honest, might not even be what you really want when you get there.
So I'm just going to leave you with this one question to chew on. We've been taught to compete against everybody else for success, for status, for the appearance of having it all. But what if we just changed the competition entirely? What if the only race you were running was against yourself? What if the only goal was to be just a little bit happier today than you were yesterday? What do you think would change then?